Hi BookTube. I'm here with a weekly reads, and because it annoys me when other people don't do this, I'm going to show you my whole shirt so you can read it, because I always get curious what people's shirts say. And it says, "Sorry, I can't. I have plans with my cat." Yeah. So, that's the shirt. Um, yeah, I'm just here telling you what I have read, what I'm going to read. It's a lot, because I didn't do it last week, I think. And I've been reading a lot. I finished Swallowed, and I'm so glad that I finally come across a book this year that I love, that I can say without hesitation, like, this is one of my all-time favorite books. I read like the first 10-12 pages at work, and I went on Amazon and I bought a copy of the book, because I originally had it out from the library, and I was just like, I need it tomorrow. Yeah, so I do have it. It is tabbed all the way up. It is an amazing story. The back doesn't really do it justice. It's about this young girl. I believe she's 9 when we start following her, and she has some sort of social mental illness, undefined, but she is so consumed with being alone and being obsessive over people, and it is just a fascinating look at her mind. And it's she's not like if you're not into children's narratives, like, whereas the child's age doesn't match the narrative, it's not gonna fit, because like the things that she's thinking about is like beyond most 9-year-olds, but it's also too immature to me to pit into an older person, if that makes sense. It makes sense. I'm just gonna flip open to a random tab here and read it out to you. Okay. How can things hurt you if they're meaningless? You can resist being mean, but you'll still be mean. A stone can strive for softness, but it will stay hard. A wine lover can't avoid wine. A wine hater can avoid hating wine. You're done, period. You're a heater. You can't do anything about it. Humans are the only heaters who can kick up a fuss, bend out of shape. A human is a heater that may not be content with its own shape and want to assume others, but a sardine swimming up a fuss in the sea still won't make waves. To be someone is to have a destiny. Having a destiny is like having only one destination. When you only have Budapest, you have one alternative. Either you go to Budapest or you don't. You can't go to Belgrade. I'm not guilty of anything I do. I've never wanted to be or had time or to want to. Just like, it's pretty cool. So it's a lot of in her head. There are a few like plot things that happen to kind of move the story along, but you're mostly just spending time inside this girl's head and going like, that's very insightful, that's scary, that's very interesting, I never thought about it this way. So yeah, Swallowed by Regine Ducharme was very good. I also finished Pagan Christianity by Frank Viola and George Barna. So this is about the origins of church practices. So like the buildings, the clothes, why do we dress up for church, sermons, origins of sermons. What else did he talk about? The pastor, even having just a pastor, the music, tithing, baptism. Yeah, so it's all about how those things have origins not in the early church, but in mostly coming from Constantine and Roman pagan practices, and trying to use that in Christianity, and the ways that fails us as Christians. It was really quite interesting. Look, I didn't agree with everything he said, but it was really quite interesting to learn about the origins of those things. Yeah, he seemed to vary at times with like, I'm right and there's no question about it. There's no leeway to say maybe these things can be helpful in certain ways or not. Yeah, my big concern was, I know people who do home churches and they're like in cults, so and I know churches can lead to that as well, so, and he's like, if it's done properly, yeah, so it's interesting. It's very interesting. I also finished The Strange Scent of Saffron. I finished this on the 1st of September. I think it was technically the 1st, was doing an overnight shift and I read this book, and I read it all in one sitting, like literally just sat there, picked it up. Thankfully, nothing was going on. It's 170 pages. This is another awesome book. I think my secret to finding good books now is looking at Quebecois literature, because this is another Quebecois book. Swallowed was Quebecois, like, they're putting out some good stuff. Even though that's from, like, the 1960s. Anyways, so we're mainly following this one girl, Nil, who is very strange. We're not really in her head, so we don't know exactly what's going on, but she's run away. She's not an older woman, but, like, she's, like, in her 20s or so. She's running away from her uncle and her brother. There's some kind of nefarious, scary stuff going on. It's kind of hinted at early on, and then you kind of get more. The questions aren't necessarily 100% answered in this book, but you have to pick up on the clues to kind of see what's going on. So we follow her. She comes across Jacob, and Jacob is, it says it on the back, so it's not a spoiler. He's dying of HIV. And there's some, of course, mysterious things going on in his past. So we follow these two characters as they have this unconventional relationship. It's not a romantic relationship at all, which I really appreciate. So she's kind of like this woman who's been beaten and broken, and she's mentally all over the place. She goes in and she tries to, she dines and dashes at his restaurant, and then she ends up at his house. And he's just like, yeah, sure, you can stay. Yeah, it's really quite good. I really enjoyed this one. I read some comics and manga. I picked up Yoshihiro's Tatsumi's The Pushman and Other Stories. I read Abandon the Old in Tokyo and enjoyed it. This one is interesting. They're little short stories, and I can't necessarily show you because there is a lot of nudity, but it's all about like working class men, and there's kind of that theme, and then like the theme of like abortions as well running throughout it, so it's really quite interesting. Yeah, if I can show you, yeah, we can show you this page. So like that's his kind of style. They're definitely like adult manga, and he like pioneered that genre. Then I read, I'll make sure the cover's safe for it. This is like YA, but there is some nudity in it. This is Ranma Half by Rumiko Takahashi, who's probably more well known for Inuyasha, but I wanted to read this one. This is from the, just checking, nope. Okay, there's the style. It's from the 1980s. It's about this character, Ranma, who's a martial arts student, and he goes to China to train, and he falls into this cursed lake where now every time he gets wet, he turns into a girl. And he has to be dunked in hot water to turn back into a boy. And his parents want him and to be engaged to this girl. And they're both still in high school, so I don't think it's gonna happen. But yeah, it's interesting because the girl also, she's also a martial artist, and she has this guy at school who's just like, whoever can like beat her up successfully can ask her out, and she's just like, this is the stupidest thing in the world, but she beats up all the boys like every day. It's quite funny. It's just really enjoyable, lighthearted. Interesting look at gender, because he's not always like, there's one point where he's like, yeah, I've lost my masculinity, but like there's other times where it's just like, yeah, I'm a girl, like get used to it. Sometimes a girl, sometimes a boy. It's interesting for the 1980s. I've also read Persona 4 Volume 1 and 2. So this is based on a video game, and it's mostly about like confronting your demons, almost quite literally. Like, they go into this alternate world because there's been some murders, and also the murders, but in there they also encounter like an externalized part of them, like their dark side. And they got to fight it, accept it, all those kinds of things, and they're still searching for the murderer. It's really quite interesting as well. Perfect age to like high schoolers confronting you know, their different ideas and beliefs and what they're going to be when they grow up and that kind of stuff. Okay, now we're into. Oh, I also read another one. Let's see if I can get it up here. I read Juniba's Monkey Meat, which was quite interesting. Sorry I didn't have this prepped. He's from Senegal, but he works in France, and he's both the artist and the comic writer. And yeah, it's a series of short stories, but they're all interconnected through this Monkey Meat Corporation, which is kind of like this nefarious thing. It has a lot of allusions to like colonialism and capitalism and stuff like that, and like this company taking over things, and it's really cool. Is that all I took? Okay, this is one of my favorite stories. So we have this fellow here. I don't know if it's gonna show up, and he's interested in comics, and that's like, I'm like, that's Naruto, isn't it? Like that's, and then he transforms into this character, and I was like, it is allusions to Naruto. And then he joins this team. One second. He joins this team where all the characters are kind of like based off of characters. So we have like Darth Vader, there's like a Superman, that's Pirates of the Caribbean, that's Tomb Raider, I think that's supposed to be Hello Kitty, maybe Kill Bill, I don't know what that one is, and then like Thor. I thought that was quite funny to see. Yeah, so that's all that I've finished reading, and what I'm going to read. Persona 4 Volume 3. I'm going to go back to the library and get the rest of the volumes 2 to read in August. I read Doubt Volume 1. I think I talked about it, so I got Doubt Volume 2 here. And it's just about these kids. I say kids because I'm 37, almost going to be 37, so like anyone under 20 is a kid to me. Yeah, they're playing this game where there are a bunch of rabbits, but one of them is a wolf, and they have to decide who the wolf is before they all get murdered, and then the game comes to real life. So yeah, I'm gonna read that. Okay, now on to actual, like, just no picture books, no pictures in this one. This is Prince of Dogs by Kate Elliott. This is book 2 in the Crown of Stars series. I've started reading this before, and I got it from the library. I had to return it, and I found a copy at the thrift store, so I just marked where I was, and I'll be reading just this section of it. Yeah, so the Crown of Stars series is like a fantasy series from the 90s, which I love. I love that kind of era, 80s, 90s fantasy. And we follow 2 main characters. We follow some other characters, but there's 2 primary characters. And the first one is this girl who there's hinted at that she has these super magical powers, but she's unable to access them. She hasn't been trained by them. And then we follow this boy who was supposed to become a monk type person, but instead he joins this army. Yeah, and we follow them along. And the most interesting part of this series for me is the world building. It's like typical medieval setting, but the religion system and the gender dynamics are really quite interesting. So like there's still issues, obviously. It's not like the perfect female utopia type thing. There's still obviously like issues, but women can be in like high places of power in both religion and in secular government. So like they're like up there, and like they can be above men. Like it's not just separate like nunnery, monastery. It's like those are separate, but like the Pope can be a female. The equivalent of the Pope can be a female. Yeah, and like queens have the same power as kings and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter if the boy is born first, it's whoever gets someone pregnant first, or gets pregnant if they're female, is then the new ruler. So that's interesting. Yeah, I'm really enjoying that series. I also plan on reading Trickster Adrift by Eden Robinson. This is another book 2 in the Son of a Trickster trilogy, whatever it's called. So the first book is Son of a Trickster, and there we follow, I believe he's 16, 17 years old, and he's indigenous, and you know, the system has failed him pretty much. He's at home, his mom's a drug user, and all this other stuff's going on, and he's like a gangster with a heart of gold. How I kind of, is that trope. You know, like he's selling drugs, but he's also, you know, helping his elderly neighbors mow the lawn type thing. And so we're going to follow along with his stories here, because it gets sort of supernatural at the end, as we deal with the trickster figure in indigenous mythology. And as well, I'm going to be reading Sacred Origins of Profound Things, the stories behind the rites and rituals of the world's religions by Charles Panatti. I just realized as I was opening this up last night that it's kind of similar to pagan Christianity, but it talks about all different kinds of religions. It's not just about Christianity. It talks about Islam and Judaism as well. It says world religions, but the only things I kind of saw in the table of contents and flipping through, seems just to be the Abrahamic religions. I'm not complaining. That's interesting. It would be cool if it was more, but I'm sure that book would be like 3 times the size, right? Yeah. So that's it. Looking around, there's books all over the place, but I think that's it from like the last few weeks and going into this week. Let me know what you've been reading, and thank you for watching.